Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health Radio. I'm your host, Sarah Banton. I'm a health coach, natural supplement expert, and a busy mom of 3 teenagers. I believe that your body does want to and is capable of rebuilding and healing itself regardless of what chronic disease you may have. I'm here for you to answer your questions, bring you innovative and cutting-edge technology and health solutions to empower you and your ability to reach your optimal state of health. Today, my guest will be talking about diet and how it affects chronic disease and weight loss and how it relates to your physical, mental, and spiritual health. And I know better than anyone that you really need a strong physical foundation to work on your mental growth, whether it's overcoming anxiety and depression, which everyone is dealing with right now, losing weight, or detoxing your body in the proper way. You need that strong physical foundation of health in order to gain the willpower to make bigger changes in your life. If you're new to following me, I specialize in helping you get there. You can find my health articles and protocols at acceleratedhealthproducts.com. I dive into an array of health conditions, their causes and symptoms, and how to address them naturally. I've spent thousands of dollars and hours of my time biohacking different supplements, diets, and even energetic technologies that don't work so that you don't have to. If you have any health issues that you need help with, you can email me directly through the website. I personally read every one. Now to the good stuff. Craig Emmerich. He graduated in electrical engineering, but has spent over 15 years researching nutrition and working with thousands of clients alongside his wonderful wife, Maria Emmerich. He's the international best-selling author of the books Keto, The Complete Guide, and the Carnivore Cookbook, which I absolutely love. He uses his knowledge of how our bodies work to help clients heal and lose weight, leveraging their biology to make it easy. I have been following Craig and his lovely wife for years. And for those of you who have missed my interview with Maria, you can find it at Accelerated Health Radio under episode 32. Welcome, Craig. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, I've been following the keto diet for 5 years, and I know the benefits I've experienced. They're amazing. The mind, the lack of anxiety that I know. I was in a car accident, and it threw me for a loop because it put me into a whole bunch of anxiety and depression and memory loss and all these brain issues. And I've always been an athlete. I've always been into fitness. So it was just a bonus to have those things go in the right direction. But the mind altering state of being in a ketogenic state was mind blowing. I mean, my brain after my car accident and going keto worked better than in my days at Stanford as a college student. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's this lifestyle is one of those that, you know, in the media, it's typically characterized as this weight loss, quick fix diet. And, you know, that's all they label it with. But in reality, you know, we've been doing this for 20 years now. Our kids have been eating this way. You know, they're 10 and 11 years old. They've been eating this way for 9 years, you know, and they just eat real whole foods and in the right, keeping the starches and things low. And they're thriving. And the thing about, you may lose some weight if you need to lose weight.
Right.
But the most people that stick with this lifestyle for long term they stick with it because of how they feel, how the mental clarity is through the roof, their energy is through the roof. You know, all these things about how they feel. They get off medications. It's really more about health than anything, and that's what keeps people on this lifestyle.
Well, you just touched on something that I'm so passionate about, and that's our kids. I've got 3 kids. They're 14, 16, and 18. And my oldest son, Jackson, was on the verge of leukemia at the age of 9. So his health and diet were paramount. It was so important to put him on the right supplements and the right foods. And even back then, before keto, I knew carbs were not good. I knew sugar wasn't good. So I cut those things out. And essentially he was on a keto diet. I just didn't know it. And so since then, through supplements and diet, that's 9 years ago. And he has not even, there's no issues with leukemia, but he hasn't even had a cold or flu. He has not missed a day of school. And none of my kids have. No antibiotics, because the diet boosts your immune system. It has all of these other health benefits. They're able to do sports the way they couldn't have done else, otherwise with the way they're eating. And you can do it. I love when I find parents that say, oh, well, I'm going keto and I'm sticking to this strict diet, but my kids are eating mac and cheese and pizza, because you can't make your kids eat a certain way. Yeah. And I love the videos of your two boys cooking and having fun with it, and, just so excited about the food they're eating. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's one of the keys. Is Maria is really great about getting them involved and getting them, if they help make the recipe with you, they're going to be more apt to want to try it. And so, getting them involved, I think is a huge thing. Plus understanding where their food comes from and what their food is, that's a thing that kids just don't have a concept of these days, is where their food comes from. What, it doesn't come from a package, it comes from whole food ingredients, and that's learning that is key. But the energy and those kind of things, you think about kids in sports and how transformative this can be, because when you're a sugar burner and you're eating lots of carbohydrates, and so you're primarily burning sugar as your fuel, you're rarely tapping into that fat tank that you have as a fuel tank, right? And it's kind of like having a hybrid car where you've got this battery, the battery runs you for 50 miles, and you've got this gas tank that can go for 500 miles, and you never use the gas tank. You just drive around on the electric. When the electric runs out, you charge it up and run on the electric again. You never tap that. It's like this huge fuel tank that you never tap into. And when you limit the carbohydrates and allow your body to start burning its own fat as fuel, you got this huge gas tank that, you can go so much better endurance in sports and things. In our conference that we have going on, we interviewed Zach Bitter, who is the world record holder for the 100-mile race. So he is completely keto and, kind of carnivore adjacent almost, where he's almost eating carnivore, and he's breaking world records in, 100 miles. So, any concept that you need carbs for energy is totally false.
I agree. It was interesting. When I first went keto, I was on an airplane and I was sitting next to a girl that I didn't know at the time. She pulls out an avocado and starts eating it. And then we started talking, and she was a professional Ironman, and she had gone keto. It had not only was the sugar burning glucose goo pack type process that most athletes were doing at the time, it destroyed her gut, it destroyed her hormones, and she was just falling apart. So the doctor she worked with Peter Attia, and he directed her into a more ketogenic diet, and she will go hours within her races without fueling. And it's so amazing, and super fit. Obviously, you don't break down your muscles as you're working out like that, and you're in a ketogenic state. And there's just so many benefits. And we're getting a little sidetracked around ourselves, because I wanted to first touch on your journey, because I know women usually are the ones to blaze the trail, like I am with my husband and Maria was with you. Yep. But you are doing it for a different reason, with your Lyme disease. And Lyme is something that I see in my business through Accelerated Health Products. I feel like it's the silent disease around the country that no one talks about, because the Western medicine doesn't know what to do with it. So I'd love to help people understand how you've managed your Lyme with the keto carnivore diet and what you've seen.
Yeah. So originally, Maria started, like 20 years ago, going down this path of low carb and seeing the benefits in her health. I was lucky in that I didn't have any real health issues at the time. I didn't have IBS like she did and all of this. I had some extra weight that I lost, but it wasn't a lot. I wasn't obese or anything. And so for me, it took, I have a German background. I brew my own beer. So it was harder for me to get on board, like you said, but probably 4 or 5 years later, so probably 14, 15 years ago, I started just seeing how well I felt when I ate what she ate. And so I just transformed everything to keto, and we, been keto ever since. And so initially, when I started having my Lyme pain about 8, 9 years ago, I started just getting this pain in my lower back, and I thought it was from an old football injury that I had in my lower back that was just acting up over the years. But it was different. It wasn't like this shooting pain that I used to get. It was like a constant stiffness and soreness in my lower back, and it just kept going up and up my back into my neck. And after about 6 years of this progressively worse pain into the shoulders, and I started getting migrating pain in my joints. I realized something's just not right, and I went in to get checked out. And so for me, it was actually, I was keto before I got Lyme, and so I was probably able to manage the pain longer than I let it go longer than I should have. So it was kind of a blessing and a curse that way. But with our clients, as soon as they go keto, they see a huge improvement. But for myself, what ended up happening was, as part of the treatment over the last 2 years, when I started treating this, I started going carnivore, which is eliminating all plants. And that actually was a big help for my pain, especially the migrating pain. If anybody's familiar with Lyme, the migrating pain is one of the most frustrating and hard things to deal with. I still have flare-ups occasionally, but the migraine pain is where, in the morning I'll wake up and it feels like I sprained my right knee. And no reason. It just feels like it's sprained. You can't hardly walk on it. And the next morning it could be the left knee or the ankle or the hip, or both hips, or it just moves around, and it's very, very hard to deal with that chronic pain. When I stick to strictly carnivore, the migraine pain is gone. The overall pain is reduced a lot as well. I have some theories on that, as far as, anti-nutrients in plants and things that, our bodies are so taxed, our immune system is so taxed when you have Lyme that things can creep in that usually your body can take care of. And all plants come with anti-nutrients, which your body has to detox and deal with. So I think that's one of the reasons that carnivore could be helpful.
And I want to get into the plants and the anti-nutrients on how they can get, be seen as poison to your body. But first, I really want to go into nutrient density, because a lot of people think, well, you're missing your nutrients from all the vegetables and the fruits when you just go carnivore. And for those of you who are new to me and Craig and just basic keto, would be, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the definition would be a low carb, higher fat, moderate protein type diet. That is what we're talking about. But then some go more carnivore, where you're just eating animal proteins and you're eliminating all plant foods. And so you've got vegans over in one camp and carnivores in the other. And I always laugh because my sister's a vegan, and whenever we go out to restaurants, they said, well, okay, well, you eat my vegetables and I'll have your protein, and then we'll all be happy. But so the nutrient density and the myth behind needing the vegetables for nutrients. Can you discuss that? And I love how you put this out in the Keto Carnivore Cookbook.
Yeah, and I originally wrote a whole chapter in our keto book about this, about, I don't know, four or 5 years ago when we were writing that book, because I started looking into it myself, and I was just shocked myself that, after at that point, I don't know, 10 years of doing this, I didn't even know how many nutrients there were in animal proteins. And so I started looking at, the calculators online and all the, nutrient breakdown of different foods. And I started putting together these charts comparing, beef. So basically like hamburger or a steak, compared to broccoli and, blueberries and all these foods that, kale, things that we think are these superfoods for nutrients. And as I was putting the charts together, I'm like, how do we not know this? How do we not know that beef has more nutrients across a wider range than any of those other things? And if you start talking about things like beef liver, there's probably nothing on the planet that's more nutrient dense than beef liver. It's high in everything. And so that's it just hit me like, how do we not know this? How does in the media and education and everything about what's in our food, how do we not talk about this more? And I think one of the reasons the media doesn't talk about it more is because we're taught to avoid meat, and so they don't want to talk about how good it is. And I think that leads into this misconception of where we get our nutrients. But if you stick a plate with a steak, some kale, some blueberries, and ask the general population where you're getting your vitamins and minerals, they're probably going to point to the kale or the blueberries. And in reality, it's the steak.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel it when I eat a steak. I just feel my body saying thank you in so many ways. And I've played around with keto. I've played around with carnivore. And I used to eat a ton of vegetables thinking that was the right thing to do. But I would have IBS symptoms and bloating, and it would just be painful. And I've now, I play around with carnivore and keto. I go back and forth a little bit, but I see the vegetables more as a treat on the side, but not as my source of nutrients. And I definitely don't overeat it because I will suffer the consequences if I do. But what about the argument with fiber? Because a lot of people think that we need more fiber to have more bowel movements, and more bowel movements means you're healthier. Can you touch on that and how the gut microbiome? This is another question along with that, is when you switch from a more vegetable based diet to a carnivore diet, do you need to do it slowly to let the gut microbiome adjust? And how long does that take for the gut to adjust and the right bacteria to adjust in the gut?
Yeah. So first of all, as far as fiber and bowel movements, there's been studies that have shown that lowering dietary fiber actually makes constipation better. You're actually forcing more material through your body that you can't digest, which is fiber, and it bulks up the stool. It can elongate the bowels and irritate them, so it can actually cause problems. There's a book called Fiber Menace that is really good at talking about these issues that adding lots of fiber can have on the digestive tract. But in reality, usually it's lack of salt. If you don't, the colon is a super extractor of moisture. If you're not getting enough salt in your diet and thus not retaining enough water, your bowels, your colon's going to subtract all the moisture from your stool to keep it, because it wants to hold on to that moisture because you're not getting enough salt to retain it. And that can cause, constipation. So getting enough salt a lot of times can fix the issue. Yeah. And as far as the gut microbiome, there's no biological need for fiber. It goes right through you. The only thing it does is it can feed certain gut bugs in your gut flora. But your gut flora can be fed by many things. There's butyric acid in butter. There's collagen, glucosamine, things in meats that are actually more fermentable than cellulose, plant fiber. So those things feed the gut flora even better. And again, that's something we also don't talk about. But as far as the gut flora in general, going to something like carnivore, in our Carnivore Cookbook, I spent a fair amount of time on this one study that was done because it was really well done study, and it took two groups. They randomized. It's a randomized controlled trial, so it's a well done study where they took a group of people in the standard American diet and randomized them into two groups. One started eating completely plant-based, so all they ate was vegetables, vegetables, fruits, etc. The other one went completely animal-based. And this was well done. It was whole foods. It wasn't like some of these studies where it's like, oh, they're on the keto diet eating soybean oil and this junk, you know. It was well done. It was whole foods. It was eggs, bacon, steaks, you know, so it was well done. And they looked at the gut microbiome of both these groups and the changes in the gut microbiome. Number one of the most interesting things is it took 24 hours for this big shift in the gut microbiome, either way, for going to vegetables or going to animal-based. And so that shows how flexible and how quickly the microbiome can change. And then secondly, no matter which group, they both had the same diversity of gut flora. So the same type, you know, the various strains of gut bugs you have, they had all the same strains in both groups, no matter what, if they went all plants or all animal. There was a big shift in the amounts of certain bugs, you know, certain gut bugs that really like those animal products, the glucosamine and those things, those went up. The ones that, you know, like plants went down, but you would expect that because they're not getting fed what they want. So the ones that are getting fed would thrive. Same thing with the plant-based, you know, shifted. So that's expected. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting in the study is they looked at the gene expression. So the genes that are responsible for synthesizing vitamins. So this means, you know, these genes are responsible for taking in, absorbing and utilizing vitamins into the diet. On the plant-based, there was basically no change from standard American diet in these genes responsible for synthesizing vitamins. On the animal-based diet, they went through the roof.
Wow.
So why is that? Well, what we just discussed, you're getting a huge dose of vitamins and minerals from the animal proteins. You're not getting the anti-nutrients from the plants, which can rob you of those nutrients, which we haven't really talked too much about. But I mean, there's things like oxalates that like to bind on to magnesium and calcium and these minerals and leach them from the body when the body detoxes them. Because these things, you know, oxalates are something the body doesn't want or need. And so it's got to detox from things like kale and spinach and these kiwi, you know, a lot of different things have oxalates. And so it latches on to things like calcium as the body tries to get rid of them. And guess what happens if they build up in, you know, they can get kidney stones, which are typically calcium oxalate kidney stones. It's your body. It's not the calcium's fault. It's the oxalates that your body's trying to get rid of that ends up causing them. But back to the example with the gut flora, why are the vitamin and the nutrients going through the roof? Well, there was a study done looking at oysters, and oysters are a really good source of zinc. And they looked at the blood after eating them to see how much zinc got into the blood, because that's what matters. If you eat something and it goes right through you, what's the point? You want to get it into your blood so your body can use it. Well, after eating just oysters, the zinc went way up in the blood. After eating those oysters with black beans, about a third of the zinc got into the blood. After eating the oysters with corn tortilla chips, almost none of the zinc got into the bloodstream. And so what's happening is, you know, things like the oxalates and things that are anti-nutrients in these plants are latching onto the zinc and robbing it of the body. So when you eat the plant, the animals by themselves without the plants, you get this huge dose of vitamins and minerals into the body. And that's why the body had to ramp up these genes responsible for synthesizing them.
It's so interesting. And I love that vegans, that their solution to iron and some other really strong nutrients is spinach and kale. And these are the things that are ripping, they are anti-nutrients. And we have to take a short commercial break, and we're going to come back and talk more about vegetables, other vegetables besides spinach and oxalates that can poison your body and possibly cause weight gain and inflammation and make your chronic disease even worse. We'll be right back.
Are you wanting to optimize your physical, mental, and emotional health? Visit www.acceleratedhealthproducts.com. Accelerated Health Products to detox, reset, and rebuild your immune system naturally, and to accelerate your body, mind, and spirit with cutting-edge supplements and solutions. Get Sarah Banta's personal advice on a protocol just right for you. That's www.acceleratedhealthproducts.com.
Welcome back to Accelerated Health Radio. I'm your host, Sarah Banta, the owner of Accelerated Health Products. And today we have the best-selling author, Craig Emmerich. Craig, we started talking about oxalates and vegetables that we all think are superfoods like spinach and kale. But I want to then now go on to lectins. And I, unfortunately, was eating zucchini and cucumbers every single day, literally every single day. And when I heard about lectins and that I had to eliminate them, or at least try to eliminate them, I think I went through withdrawals and a major depression. But unfortunately, I felt better when I did. So let's talk about lectins. And
so there's anti-nutrients are any compound in plants that the body doesn't need, want, or can use in any way. And so they end up having to be detoxed or dealt with in some way to get rid of them because the body doesn't want them. And there's a lot of these. There's thousands of these compounds that are in all kinds of different plants. I think cabbage has like 50 different anti-nutrient compounds just in cabbage. And a lot of these we've never even studied as far as, what can happen in the body. Oxalates have a toxicity level. You can die from getting too much oxalate. A man actually did in Spain after eating some it's a root vegetable soup. He ate like 3 big, huge bowls, and he was diabetic, and so his tolerance level was lower, and he ended up dying. So we're never told this. We're never told that. We're always told that vegetables are unlimited because there's no negatives to them. There are some negatives, especially if you're immune compromised or you have issues, autoimmune issues or Lyme disease or some of these things that, where you've got a depressed immune system or you've got something going on metabolically that could be more sensitive to these anti-nutrients that are in the plants. And that's what one thing I want to say is, not everybody, yes, there are people that can eat a fair amount of vegetables and be fine, and their body detoxes the anti-nutrients and they deal with it. But people that are immune, that are like me with Lyme, I can't. If I add too much plant material back to my diet, my pain flares up, my joint pain goes through the roof, and it's not fun. And that's why something like this for you, your body is just not able to deal with that like it should, and so eliminating it can be really helpful. Your body doesn't have to detox.
One thing I wanted to mention just personally, and I'd love to know if you or Maria have come across women who've experienced this, but there are times of the month that I can handle certain vegetables and times that I can't. And whether it's hormonal based or my gut, I know gut mobility and gut strength, I should say. I know your spleen is the battery pack to your digestive system. And my spleen will be weaker during certain parts of the month, and my whole digestion is weaker during parts of the month. And that's when I tend to go more carnivore, and I'm not as flexible with what I'm eating. And then there's some times during the month where I can get away with eating some more of these vegetables and not suffer the consequences.
Yeah, our hormones control so much in our body, and I haven't heard that before, but it makes a lot of sense because there's so many things that hormones control, and you can have a lot of women have water retention certain times of the month because the hormones are changing and shifting, and that can really have a lot of effects on the body, including digestion. So that doesn't surprise me.
So cruciferous vegetables, here we've eliminated vegetables with oxalates, vegetables with lectins. And if anyone is curious more about lectins, I have a huge article on acceleratedhealthproducts.com describing what vegetables are in that category. And also I have an ebook that describes on the foods that are on the good list and the bad list. And, we haven't even talked about grains and beans. Here we are talking about a ketogenic diet. So we assume that people are not eating grains like quinoa and the quote unquote healthy grains and the beans, but they all have lectins. But I have always been under the impression that cruciferous vegetables are the quote unquote safe vegetables to eat. But you were just saying cabbage has a ton of anti-nutrients. So can you talk more about the cruciferous vegetables?
Yeah, sure. There, when you think about plants and anti-nutrients, you have to think of it kind of on a spectrum, right? Some anti-nutrients are going to be more harmful. Oxalates are definitely a big one. You see a lot. Lectins are another, and because they do have, in larger amounts, can really cause people problems. There's a whole. Sally Norton is one who talks about oxalates a lot. There's a whole group of people on this just oxalates, in that you can have oxalate dumping when you cut the oxalates out, and that can be very uncomfortable. You can have sty in your eye, which is actually oxalates. So oxalates are basically a tiny crystal, and these tiny crystals, they cause irritation. They cause irritation of the gut, could possibly cause leaky gut and autoimmune type stuff. If you have high amounts, but they can build up in the body, and when you stop taking oxalates in, the body pushes these crystals out, and it can cause, basically you've got the sty is just crystals being pushed out of your eye or in joints, or sore. If you have a cut, the body will just shove this stuff out. It's trying to get rid of it. But a lot of these anti-nutrients, we haven't studied them. They're possibly less harmful. So that's why we haven't studied them as much as others. So it is about a spectrum for sure. And again, it really depends on the person, right? Some people can be just fine with certain plants and not others. You talk about people who have an issue with nightshades. Well, that's a specific anti-nutrient that they have a problem with. That is in those type of plants, that the nightshade family of plants. That if you're sensitive to nightshades, you're sensitive to that anti-nutrient, and so you should avoid them. So again, it's it depends on the person and how sensitive you are to those compounds.
And I was eating almost an eggplant every single day, probably 15 years ago. So that was another shock to my system when I had to stop eating those.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I felt better. Every time I eliminated these different foods, I felt better. And now if I have a bite or two of it, it doesn't bother me as much. And that's why I love the carnivore diet as the ultimate elimination diet. It is truly the ultimate elimination diet. So when someone goes from, because I think it would be hard to go from the standard American diet to the carnivore diet directly, and that's why keto is such a nice transition. But if you are in the carnivore diet stage and you've done the complete elimination, what plant foods would you start adding in to test out first? And what are the least offensive to the body?
The greens, the simple greens, like, iceberg lettuce, they're low on oxalates compared to like a spinach. Starting to add in like little salad type things like that with butter lettuce, iceberg lettuce, I think are pretty low. That's a good place to start. You can start looking at things like in our carnivore cookbook. We call this the carnivore autoimmune protocol, because it is the ultimate elimination diet. And somebody like me, it's great to go just beef and salt. That's it for a while, just to let the body adjust, and then slowly add things back in. We start with adding other types of protein, whether it's pork or fish or whatever. And you're just kind of feeling out, okay, how's my body react to this? Is this, do I feel better or worse after eating this? And if you feel worse after a couple of days of adding it, eliminate that food again and just go by what your body's telling you. And then we add in dairy and eggs, which we do that last because those can be more sensitive to certain people. And then you start looking at, okay, do I add maybe some zero carb, like sauces, like mustard, more spices, these type of things. Then maybe some, like I said, some lettuce, maybe some other things like broccoli, cauliflower, those kind of low carb veggies. It depends on the person. Tomatoes can be good for some people to try, but it's really kind of feeling out, what do you enjoy, and try adding that thing in and see what your body does. If you get a bad reaction, try eliminating it again for a couple weeks and see if it goes back the other way. That is a pretty good sign that you don't need that food in your diet.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I want to switch gears a little bit to a concept that you guys talk about a lot, the oxidative priority. And this is how to get your body to burn fat. And people don't understand, why am I working out 2 hours a day? I'm lowering my caloric intake. I can't burn fat. I'm gaining weight. But how do you get, especially as we get older into our 40s and 50s and 60s, it gets a little harder and harder and harder. So let's talk about the concept of oxidative priority and how it just makes things really simple and easy to understand.
Yeah, so the body, I like to think of our body as kind of like a car, in that, our blood vessels are like the fuel lines on a car, and on a car, you don't want to get too much fuel into the engine because you can blow the engine up. So you tightly control how much fuel is going, in the fuel lines at any given time. Well, the body is very much the same. It tightly controls how much fuel is in your blood at any given time. If you're right now in a rested state, we have around 30 calories of total fuels. That's glucose, ketones, free fatty acids, alcohol if you drink some. It keeps it around 30 total calories in your entire blood volume.
Wow.
That's not a lot of energy. That's what it wants, and it likes to keep it in that tight range. That's why your blood glucose, likes to keep in a tight range of about 85 milligrams per deciliter, which is about a teaspoon or 4 grams of glucose in your entire blood volume. That's it. And any of these fuels being too elevated can kill you. Too much alcohol can kill you. Too many ketones can kill you. Too much glucose can kill you. Too much fat in your blood can kill you. And so when you eat a meal, comparing your meal to that 30 calories, as your body's digesting, there's a ton of energy coming into your blood. And so the body has to prioritize things in a way that makes sense. And the way that makes the most sense is in reverse order of storage. Mm-hmm. So what's the easiest thing for your body to store? Fat. Because in theory, you have basically unlimited fat storage. There's people with millions of calories of stored fat on their body. And so the body, when all this energy is coming in, so say you have a meal with, a couple glasses of wine, a meal with, have both carbs and protein and fat. The alcohol takes number one priority because there's no place to store it. You can't store alcohol. The body has to burn it off to get rid of it. And so what happens is alcohol is elevated in the blood. Body doesn't want to die with too much alcohol, so it switches to burning only alcohol and storing everything else. And so the meal, the carbohydrates, those get stored, the fat, that gets stored while it's dealing with the elevated alcohol levels. So it's kind of like a switch that, if any of these higher priority fuels are present, the lower priority ones get stored. And alcohol is number one priority because there's no storage. Ketones, if you did like an exogenous ketone type product, that would be number two, because there's not really storage for that either. Then there's protein, which you could think of technically your muscle as storage, because protein isn't used as a fuel. It's used as for building muscle, rebuilding lean mass. Your body is constantly turning over cells and rebuilding itself. There's the Nobel Prize winner for autophagy calculated that in 3 months you turn over all your cells. So, which is kind of crazy to imagine, but your body's constantly doing that, and so you always need protein, and so it uses that for that. And then the next priority is carbohydrates, and then the last one is fat, because carbohydrates, you have a limited storage in your muscle and liver for glycogen, but fat, you have basically unlimited storage. So it prioritizes fuels in that way.
And so you need to eliminate the first 4 in order to 4 or 5 in order to get to burning your fat stores. And the one thing that people don't understand too, and I wanted to touch on a little more, is the storage of glucose in the muscles. So even if you have X amount of calories stored in your body, maybe they're stuck in your quad muscles and they can't be tapped into unless you're burning or using those muscles to burn that energy. So you might be starving for more energy, even though you've got stored glucose in some pockets of the body.
Yeah, and actually, something that a lot of people don't understand is that muscle or that glycogen that's locked up in the muscles, you're not going to touch that glycogen going on a brisk walk or doing some low key workouts, not getting to real high intensity. You have to do like sprints. This it's kind of the from an evolutionary perspective, that glycogen in the muscle is your fight or flight storage, reserve. It's only going to be tapped into when you're all out sprinting, or you're in your third hour of running like a marathon. That's when you're going to be tapping those stores. It's not going to be tapped at all if you're just doing mild workouts, yoga, walking, brisk walking. And so you never tap it. And so you never have to replenish it, really. You only really need to replenish the liver glycogen, which, is like 400 calories. There's not much storage in your liver for glucose either. And so whenever you have elevated carbohydrates, it's a higher priority fuel. Your body's going to burn it when there's excess. If there's a big excess, it's going to actually convert it to fat and store it as fat. But otherwise, it's in this mode where it's got to deal with the carbohydrates. And so fat never really gets tapped into. The fat just sits in storage. You don't get into that fat burning mode ever, really, and tapping your own fat stores, hardly ever, because you've always got those elevated carbohydrates.
It's such a freeing feeling when you become keto adapted and you start tapping into those fat stores and the appetite suppressed, and you feel the mental and physical energy that just keeps going and going and going. It's something that I can't, you try to explain to people, but they just can't get their minds around it until they actually experience it. I want to talk about, for someone who wants weight loss. And, when I first entered into the world of keto, it was all about eat as much fat as you want. As long as your insulin was low, you're going to burn fat, and you'll start losing weight. And I know that's not true. So let's talk about the protein to fat ratio, or the protein to energy ratio that you talk about.
Yeah, so that's one of the misconceptions with keto. There's, we've been doing this for like 20 years, and we've learned, what works, what doesn't. And keto's gotten really popular over the last 3 or 4 years. And so there's a lot of people jumping into the space, and they've kind of latched onto this sort of rate, like you got to get 70% fat or 80% fat to be keto. And that's a therapeutic keto that was developed actually in like 1909 or something, for seizure control. Mm-hmm. It works really well for controlling seizures when you have elevated blood ketones, but that's a therapeutic. That's not weight loss. That's not general health. That's not, that's a misconception. And so what you really want to look at is going back to how the body works. And if you look at oxidative priority and you cut out all the higher priority fuels, you cut out, alcohol, don't take any exogenous ketones, keep your carbohydrates to a minimum, get enough protein to maintain your lean mass. And then you're kind of down to fat, right? And fat, dietary fat, almost all of it, or well, I should say all of it, when it's digested, there's only 2 places it can go: be burned in your muscle as fuel, because free fatty acids, actually, your muscles love burning free fatty acids, as Zach Bitter would attest, running 100 miles in record time. But if it doesn't get burned in your muscle because you're not exercising at the moment, it goes into storage. So if your goal is to burn stored fat, you have excess stored fat, you want to lose body fat, you want less going into those cells as there is coming out, because then that'll shrink them and make them smaller. You'll lose fat. So how do you do that? Well, you get a little less in the diet, and you exercise or move more to burn more coming out. It becomes really simple when you look at it from how the body works. That, if once I cut the carbs out and I get keto adapted, so I'm efficient at burning my own fat for fuel, let's dial the fat in the diet down a bit to make my body burn more of its own fat for fuel.
Right. And I love the way someone was talking about it, is that your body's essentially snacking, quote unquote, on its own fat stores all day long. It's not going into starvation mode. And that is keeping you on a ketogenic diet, because it still has plenty of fat in the diet, or what the body is using. We're running out of time, which I'm so bummed, because I could go on forever with you, Craig. But I want to talk about the conference, the Keto Adaptive virtual conference that you and Maria have put together. And for all of you listening, it's not too late to enter, and Accelerated Health Products is a sponsor, and you can get 40% off all Accelerated Health products among so many other free gifts when you register for the conference. So let's talk about who you have on there. All of these guests I'm starstruck by, because I've been following them for years. They're amazing. Yeah. So let's talk about who you've got, and can you tell us a little more about the conference?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for being a sponsor. And it's a 12-week program where each week we're releasing new content. And the great thing is, on the standard and VIP tickets, you get lifetime access to all the content. So you can always come back and look at these videos and rewatch them. And you can join now. The conference started about a week and a half ago, but you can join now and still get all the content. So you get access, even the basic ticket, which is only $30. You get access to all the content until the end of November. So you get a lot of time for like $2.50 a week. You know, it's a ton of amazing content. The people we included, we wanted to make sure we included only the most science-based and experienced people in keto and low carb. And so we got some of the top experts. There's over 175 years of combined experience in the speakers. We've got people like, you mentioned Dr. Ted Neiman, who's been doing this a long time and is a wealth of knowledge. Dr. Stephen Finney, who's been doing this since like the early 80s. He started doing studies on ketogenic diets before anybody was thinking about it. He's really kind of the godfather of keto, if you will. Dr. Finney is on, and his talk is amazing. So it's really the top experts in keto. And you also get, we also threw in a whole bunch of amazing testimonies. And this is where we wanted to inspire people to see what kind of things you can realize with this lifestyle. Twyla was one of our first ones. She lost 245 pounds. She's going to be on the cover in October of Women's World magazine because she's just transformed her life. This week is Tyler Cartwright from Keto Gains. He lost just short of 300 pounds with this lifestyle. So really amazing testimonies, very inspirational. So the combination of the two, I think, really makes it inspiring.
And where can they find the conference? And also, I want to make sure they can find you and Maria on your website and follow you on Instagram. So if you could let us know where to find you as well.
Yeah, it's keto-adapted.com. That's where you can get the conference. It's right on the front page there. You can sign up. Also on that page, there's other things that we offer, like these packages and support memberships and lots of different options there, as well as our ebooks. On social media, it's usually Craig Emmerich or Maria Emmerich. We also have a Keto Adapted page on Facebook.
Awesome. Well, Craig, thank you so much. And you guys, I can't stress enough, the cookbooks are amazing. Maria is an amazing cook and so creative. I mean, her chocolate pudding, things that you would never even know are keto or even good for you. Her recipes are fantastic. You get to benefit from it daily. So that's amazing. So thank you for joining us today, everybody. And if I can help you with your health issues, contact me directly at sarah@acceleratedhealthproducts.com. I'm happy to put together a protocol for you. I know sometimes it's hard to know where to start. You can find this episode and all of my episodes on my YouTube channel and Facebook under Accelerated Health Radio and Accelerated Health Products. You can also find this episode on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, Pandora, or whatever podcast platform you subscribe to. Make sure you check out this month's giveaway on our website, acceleratedhealthproducts.com, where I've teamed up with Drew Manning, the Fit to Fat to Fit guy, where we're combining his coaching with my new Accelerated Power Bundle, and you'll get his Kickstart Keto coaching. And the bundle includes the Accelerated Silver to boost your immune system, which we all need right now, the Acceleradine Iodine, the Accelerated Keto supplement, and the Accelerated Ancient Salt, a value of over $800. And I'm now doing Accelerated Health Bites, where I do short informational videos about health topics and solutions that you ask me about. So if you have a question or a topic you want me to address, let me know. And if you like what you heard today, please hit the subscribe button and share this with a few of your friends who may need our help. As you share my channel, it helps me help more people like you and bring more cutting edge guests like Craig on my show. Don't miss next week's interview with Brad Kearns from Get Over Yourself podcast. He's another keto guru and an amazing athlete. And you can find all of the information, supplements, and videos on the website, acceleratedhealthproducts.com. Thanks for joining us and have a great week.